Today, we are going to talk about the Rumblex and waiver series from Lifepro. I have all of them but one, but I have on today's feed, I've posted a little recap because sometimes when you're comparing machines, you think you know what you want, and then you look at all these features. And I don't know about you guys, but for me as an old school gal, sometimes the more menu items, the harder it is for me to decide what I want for lunch. So, very commonly, I get a lot of questions about which is the best model for blah, or what is the best model for blah. And
Yeah.
the answer
I
will,
have I have the Rumblex Plus, and I also have the Waiver Mini.
okay, nice, which I also have here today.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes you'll hear me say that in my sessions that there is no best machine for every application because we're doing different things with it. We live in different places. We have different body types. So sometimes when you're selecting a machine, there's different factors that drive your buying decision. Very, very commonly, just going to take a guess. Usually the number one thing that drives is a budget or a price range. That's usually where we sort of start shopping. It's very rare that people will contact me via message or through the page and say, what's the best oscillating platform, or which one has the best pulsation? Because we don't really understand the terminology. We find these things out when we start researching the plates. So the good thing about Lifepro as a company, most of their platforms offer oscillating motion, which is the main movement that I recommend.
Hmm.
So there are other movements. I was going to call you Lonnie. I'm thinking Lonnie Anderson.
Lonnie, that's right, Lonnie, that's right.
But if you want to just mute for me, I'm getting a little bit of, and if you have more questions, we are going to do some more questions towards the end. But if
Okay.
everybody just mute their mics, I am going to use this as a YouTube video with
All right.
some.
Let me just make one last comment about
Sure.
why I have the Waiver Mini. I am unable because of my poor knees and to get down to sit on my platform to work my core muscles. So I came up with the idea of the Waiver Mini and purchasing that. I set it up at the top of a staircase. I climb
Okay.
up onto it and then I can sit and do, and work my core
Probably
muscles.
almost muster a modified push-up that way too.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
able to do that. I work with my kettlebells and
Okay.
do all kinds of stuff, but while I'm sitting. But I'm not able to get down on the floor. But I came up with that idea and it works
Yeah.
perfectly well
That's
because of the size of the Waiver Mini.
well, and it's a little bit, and I've got all the weights recapped. I've got my sheets back there, but it's a popular choice if weight capacity allows. I also love the micro, but the micro is really only designed for standing purposes. It's got a lot of the amount of movement, and I'll talk about this here once I get going, but amplitude is one of the measurements we talk about. And as that machine gets smaller and smaller, sometimes people say, oh, it feels stronger, it feels more aggressive. Well, you're getting the same amount of movement, but a much smaller surface to work with. And because it is so ultra light, if you don't have a certain amount of weight going into what the micro
Yeah.
model, it's just going to fly all over the place.
I want to buy that one for when I travel. The
Traveling, that would
micro.
be, and the mini itself isn't bad. I think if you keep
It's too
your
big for me to carry. Yeah. Hmm.
I've had a couple of times where I've been late for shows, and you can check that one as luggage, the mini in the box. It does fit. And it does fit an overhead carriage because it's within the weight capacity. But I have checked that one as a piece of luggage in the past
Good
just
to know.
because I wanted to make sure it got there with me for the show. So I've done that a couple of times. Um, Today, like I say, I don't have all of Lifepro's models, but I will be reviewing all of the waivers, and I've kind of set them up in a fashion. One of the big things that people ask me about is size. When you're looking, 32 inches when you're looking online, sometimes is different when you see my physical body standing in front of it, and you can have some comparisons that way. And anyone else coming in will be muted at this point. For any of you that are not muted, please put your things on mute.
Going to mute myself. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, honey. And as I said, we will have some time for questions. Sometimes when I ramble, you have questions. So we'll have some time at the end again to do that. Today, it's all about Lifepro and the two main series that they offer. I'm speaking specifically to oscillating plates today. There are other varieties, but oscillating for me as a trainer specializing in whole body vibration, oscillating mimics how we walk. It's the most natural movement. Other movement types are a bonus. We're going to get into what I feel some of those functions are today, but there is no black and white. If we went to a gym and we hired 5 trainers to help us work out on a vibration plate, we're going to get different feedback as far as the positions, the settings, the durations, based on the trainer's experience and what they like to do and what exercises they feel are beneficial. 5 different trainers would give you 5 completely different plans of how to get from point A to B. So, you know, when you buy a vibration machine, very often in the manual, there's some guidance, there's some instructions, but nothing is cookie cutter. If I were to put every exercise, stretch, and massage humanly possible on these machines into a book, it would be about this thick. Every exercise ever done in the history of the earth can be done on a vibration machine. A vibration machine is just an environment. It's an environment that accelerates the amount of benefit that you can get doing those traditional exercises in comparison to being on the floor. For those of you dealing with pain, chronic fatigue, you know, symptoms of, you know, poor mobility, mobilized joints, inflammation, you know, there's lots of reasons that we want to be active, but sometimes it hurts in those traditional activities. Not only can we not do them, we don't want to do them. It's a mental thing. So a vibration machine makes exercises more possible. They're ultra low impact. And for those of you dealing with chronic issues and symptoms, it reduces the amount of time you spend exercise or can. So, you know, a lot of times, if you've ever seen any of my sessions, I'm always talking about 3 to 5 minutes more often, you know, do a couple short sessions versus the standard 10, 15, whatever max setting is on your machine. I'm going to be honest, it baffles me completely that I have people that have never exercised or haven't in a very, very long time. They get their machine out of the box and boom, I'm going 15 minutes right off the bat. And I'm talking to Debbie the next day because my back's hurting. I got vertigo. My ears are ringing. It must be the vibration machine. You know, it probably is to a degree in the fact that you way overdid it. 15 minutes on a vibration machine is very different than a 15-minute walk. It depends what you're doing, just like a walk. You know, if you're strolling along, you know, looking at the birds, it's very different than, you know, strapping 20 pounds worth of weights or running at a fast pace for the same distance. So the effort you put into the machine, you know, are you just standing there? Are you just doing squats? You know, that's goal aligning and what the goals are. But anytime you physically set foot on this machine, you are getting some benefits regardless of how passive. We're not going to get too far into intricate benefits, but the basic benefits of a vibration machine outside of it being quicker and less painful is they're fun. You know, there's a lot of things that I'm supposed to be doing, but they're not fun and I don't like doing them. I'm not a walker. I love walking my dog, but I wonder who's walking who sometimes. So, you know, if for me, I have a very short attention span. I got into these machines about 15 years ago, looking for an alternative to knee surgery. But before I realized it could even be an alternative for that, I had to lose weight before I could have knee surgery done. So I lost this weight using a commercial grade vibration machine, a medical device. But not many people are as crazy as me. My first machine set me back 12,000 and I bought 4 of them. And I opened a shop because I thought, oh my gosh, if me with no training and nobody helping me can have these kind of results, imagine what the rest of the world can. So 15 years of being in school, putting people on machines, learning machines, you pick up a few things. And one of the first things that I realized is there's different types of machines. And we're going to get into a few options today that Lifepro offers. Some of them have basics, some of them have more bells and whistles. And as I said, I will post in the comments today on this feed just a basic recap of the models I'm discussing today, just sort of as a quick reference. So if you have a machine or you're comparing, looking for machines, it's just a little quick reference instead of having to flip through pages and all the marketing that sometimes we run into when we're shopping online. So I'm going to turn on some more light because I realized I did not do that. And now that I've come on to Zoom, I see that all my stuff maybe isn't in camera. There. Okay. Can we see them all? I think enough. Let's go like this a bit. The fun part is not cutting my head off. Okay. So I'm going to just start with a bit of an overview on a few different things. These three here are part of the Rumblex series, and we're going to focus on those ones secondly. These ones here, because I did run out of floor space to a degree, but part of the reason I've done this is one of the big questions I get about the waiver models is size. How big is it? How tall is it? For those of you dealing with poor mobility, limited range of motion, one of the first things I love about the waiver series is how low to the ground they are. If you're not dealing with poor mobility, you're not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. But if you do have poor mobility, stepping up onto things can be a challenge if they're much more than about 6-7 inches, your standard stair. So the last thing I want is someone attempting to step up onto a machine. Okay. So I do work with some plates that are raised 10 to 14. Some of the commercial medical devices are 10 to 11 inches off the ground just because of the components that are in the housing. But that's a big step for some of my seniors that have trouble with stairs to begin with. So one of the biggest things I like to point out about the waivers is they're very low profile. And when I say things like that, that means they're lower to the ground. So you stepping physically up onto them isn't as tasking. No more tasking than stepping up onto a stair. Okay. So the base model, probably their most popular brand, is the waiver. The waiver is an oscillating only movement, which means it moves this way. And it comes with a remote control. It comes with resistance bands. Anybody who's got one of these machines always asks about the resistance bands. So I'm going to show you a trick right now. How to adjust them. You can. Not everybody thinks that you can. These are what's called a loop band, and these come with every model I'm talking about today. So loop band, on the front of each of the platforms, there's a little metal tab with a hole. You simply put your little loop through, and you loop your band back through it, and that's the way it's attached. Some plates have a metal clip or a bull clip, and a few people have said, well, why don't Lifepros? If you spent as many hours in a studio as I do, this is brilliant, and I'll explain why. It doesn't rattle. You're standing on something that vibrates, and metal clips go ding, 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 ding. It drives me nuts. And if you're in a serene spa environment, or you've got other people in the house sleeping, and you like to use your straps, sometimes you'll hear them tingling around. So Lifepro kind of, you know, jumped ahead, and this loop style I prefer much more over a traditional metal clip because it's quieter. Again, sometimes the best things aren't about, you know, a $10,000 machine. Is just good engineering and people that listen to their customers' feedback. So those loop bands come with every model. The way that you adjust them, in the middle here, I don't know if you can quite see, there is, you push this strap up. Can you see that? You push this up, and you can adjust the tension on these things. The shorter they are, the more resistance. The longer, the less resistance. And it kind of depends on what you're doing. You know, are you doing a squat where you're lower to the ground and maybe doing some raises? Or are you just standing tall and maybe doing some side raises? So you'll have to play with the length of your straps depending on what you're doing with them. But that's how you adjust them. You simply push that longer bottom part up through the middle, tighten her up, and you're good to go. Okay, so those come with every set. Okay. The other thing that comes with every model are what's called mini bands. Mini bands. Oh, I've got so many of these things around here this morning. Where are my mini bands? Oh, there. So these are the other ones. You'll get a set of 4 different colors. The black one is the strongest. These are mini bands. You can put these, you know, around your knees, around your ankles. These you can take with you if you're traveling and you just want to do a little bit of a resistant exercise. So the mini bands, and I just wanted to explain the difference between the names. These are mini bands. These are what we refer to as the loop bands, the stretchy resistant bands, the loop bands, okay? And both of those that come with each of these models, and each model also includes a mat. Why do we need a mat? If you're just standing on the plate, generally speaking, you do not need a mat, but sometimes, I don't know, maybe you've got a blister on your foot, or maybe, you know, you're sitting on it and you got a sticky outy tailbone or butt cheek or something. So the mat is nice if sometimes you just need a little bit of cushion. Perhaps you're doing some massage positions or you've got some tender areas. For my diabetics dealing with neuropathy, sometimes neuropathy isn't just a diabetic thing. There's lots, neuropathy is a symptom. You know, sometimes you can get neuropathy just because you have poor, you know, you got lots of swelling in your ankles. But neuropathy, you know, sometimes you've got sensitivity, you may want to use a mat that way. If for any of you that might be dealing with any lumps or bumps, that mat, like I say, is just a cushion, and they're fairly decent. Like, I like these mats. They're nice and thick, like a yoga mat. This is the one for the microwaver. You'll get a larger one with the other models. The other thing I want to point out about the Waver series, as I said, of course, they all offer oscillating motion. Oscillating is my preference for the vast majority of users out there. The biggest difference between the three, obviously, is the size and the weight. So the traditional Waver is about 30 inches wide, very similar. The Rumblex models are going to be a little bit bigger. When we step down to the mini, you're only just under 24 inches wide. When we step down to the micro, we're about 14 and a half. So between these three models, what is my recommendation? Depends on what you're using it for. If you're looking for a good entry level plate, you have dedicated space, you don't really plan on moving it around, I absolutely recommend the Waver. You've got a little bit of a larger plate surface to work with. You know, it's a good solid unit, very quiet in its operation. That would be my basic entry level recommendation. If space is a concern, you're looking at moving it around from time to time, you want to tuck it away at the end of the day, I would consider the mini model. The mini, to me, in my opinion, is equally effective as the Waver, but there is going to be a difference in size. And because there is a slight difference in size, the amplitude reduces. Amplitude is the amount of movement that you are moving, what the swing is, how much the machine's moving you each time. And if you're just looking at the specs, you would think, oh, well, the Waver's got to be much better because it's got 10 mils. This one's only got 8. How is that possible? If I were to put a board on the mini and make it a little bit wider, it would be the same amplitude. The reason the amplitude is getting smaller is because you have to stand a little bit closer. Amplitude by these manufacturers is measured at the outside edge of the plate. But many of you know, I do not recommend you stand wider than your hips on these machines. Unless you're doing something specific like a wide squat or doing athletic training, you don't need to stand wider than your hips. So you're not actually getting less amplitude, you just have a smaller plate so that the distance of the swing comes in a little bit. If you were to stand with your feet the exact same distance apart on the Waver and the mini, you would be using the same amplitude. I hope that makes sense. Now, the mini is a little bit different. The amount of movement, because it's such a little itty bitty plate, they've ramped it up a little bit. This one is also 8 millimeters. So if you had these two side by side, this one feels a little meaner because you've got the same amount of movement, but in a smaller plate. Another reason I recommend only using this for standing positions. I would not recommend, if you're looking at only buying one plate, it be the mini, unless all your, or the micro, I should say. The micro is the little one on top. Unless all you're planning on doing is standing all the time and never moving to anything else, I would recommend the mini or the Waver as your day-to-day machine. Where the micro comes in and is the perfect machine, it's the perfect second machine. Okay, it's little, it's 14 pounds. You can use it with your other machine. You know, if you're a fitness queen and you want to do some planks, you could put some upper body on one and feet on the other. But the micro is nice if you do a lot of traveling. Maybe you want a second machine at the office or somewhere else in the house, maybe by the kitchen island. I really like this as a second backup machine. I also really like this for my applications with children. I do a lot of pediatric recovery. You're dealing with littler bodies. And a lot of times if we're dealing with special needs, we're dealing with a lot of expenses to begin with. So something like this, just in complement to the other therapies and treatments you're doing, is a great option, as is the mini for that audience. The other big differences between these machines, there is a bit of difference in price. I'm speaking US price. Prices will vary depending on what country. It's going to be different in the UK and Canada. But in the US, you can get into the waiver at $199 US delivered. The mini is $149, as is the micro. So very reasonable. The biggest reason I love supporting Lifepro as a brand is their amazing warranty. Not only do they have a VIP page for, you know, general questions and support. I'm not an expert on all the functions of their plates. I just like using their plates and recommending them to my clients. But if you needed some technical support, if you wanted access to their training resources, they've got a wealth of tools available that I just don't see in other generic brands. There's lots of different consumer plates out there, but many companies are just selling a machine. They're not really there for you after the sale, if that makes sense. So what I mean by lifetime warranty is actually lifetime. So if you have a problem with your machine, they will take care of it. And me as the trainer, the last thing I want is phone calls from you that your machine's not working and you're suffering and pain because it's not working. So if you ever do have a service issue, they are more than phenomenal to deal with and extremely timely. There was a comment on one of my group pages this morning. There was an issue with the waiver and it was replaced within the same week. So that's pretty good business in my world. Again, just to quickly recap, the waivers are definitely, you know, entry level. If you're just looking for basic use, even a little bit of athletic use, any of these are going to fit the bill. The last big difference I want to talk about between these plates is their weight capacity. So depending on you and your size, the waiver, the regular waiver is very generous. It accommodates 330 pounds. If you're looking at the mini, we are limited at 260 pounds, which is still very generous. But if you like the appeal of the smaller plate, the compact nature of it, just make sure that you're within weight capacity. Even if you're a little over, you know, if you're 100 pounds over, that's different. But if, you know, if you're 10, 15, 20 pounds over the max capacity, there's workarounds until we get you under that. So just remember, this one's got a 260 capacity. When we go to the micro, it is less. We're dealing with a smaller plate, you know, different components to a degree. This one is limited at 220 pounds. So that's still going to, you know, for the vast majority of you, going to fit the bill. But remember, the micro is just for standing purposes only. So if you exceed 220 by quite a bit, I would look at the mini. If you exceed the 260 by a fair amount, stick with the waiver and go with the 330 capacity. Capacity does not always mean you and your body weight. Maybe you want to use some kettlebells. Maybe you want to use some click weights or other things. So if you're adding mass to your body, that becomes part of the equation. So when I say max weight, it doesn't mean user weight, it just means capacity. So you and whatever else you're putting on the plate with you. We're going to switch gears now to these ones. Okay, there are technically 4 Rumblex models. Today I'm displaying 3. I do not have the Max here, but I will speak about it because it's a good alternative for many of you that are dealing with excess weight. The first model we're going to talk about is this big bad boy at the end. And I need my coffee. 2 seconds as I ramble away. So the first one here is referred to as the Pro model. The Pro model, we're going from basic entry level to the exact opposite end of the Lifepro spectrum, which is all the bells and whistles. So the Rumblex series and what they offer is not only oscillating motion, but you've got two alternative movements on these plates. One is pulsation. Pulsation is kind of what I call micro movements. It's like a little buzz or a tickle. When you get into higher amplitudes, into the scientific world, we would call that lineal or vertical power vibration. So your power plates, your DKNs, Vibrogyms, those type of machines. Each of these offer pulsation, oscillating, and lateral. Lateral, the whole surface of the plate moves this way. Oscillating moves this way. The micro, I can't even move enough to show you, but it's kind of a buzz, a tickle feel. Why would I use alternative movements? Sometimes you just want to mix things up. Variety is the spice of life. If you use your machine regularly and you're sticking with it, you might want some variety above and beyond the oscillating movement. There's not a ton of science out there exploring oscillating, or pardon me, pulsating and lateral movement, but listening to many of you that have been using these plates, and some of you have been using these style of plates longer than I even knew about Lifepro. They do have their place. You know, just because there's not a scientific study behind something doesn't mean that it's not true. And to be completely honest with you, there's so many plates, so many settings, so many variations. Science will never cover it all. Just like treadmills, you know, there's never going to be one perfect way to use a treadmill. And science certainly isn't going to research every variable in between. So similar to vibration machines, but there are some basis, there's a lot of research to support the efficacy and the safety, but I'm talking specifically to the alternative movements. So the first alternative movement I'm going to get into a little bit more depth on is pulsation. Pulsation you can use as a mode on its own on these platforms. You can do it in combination with oscillating or lateral, or you can wrap all three together. Pulsation is going to be ideal if you are very, very, very below baseline. You're dealing with a lot of pain, very poor mobility, lots of swelling, perhaps some neuropathy. It's the kindest, most gentlest setting that you can use. And if you're unable to physically, you know, function in your day-to-day, I would absolutely recommend starting seated in a chair, regardless of what movement you're doing. But I think you'll find pulsation is a nice way just to get some soft stimulation into the lower extremities. Again, if you are dealing with neuropathy, it's a really good setting specifically to start addressing that. And maybe you just like how it feels. From a feel-good, a wellness perspective, I really enjoy how it feels for just circulation, just waking up my body and putting different body parts on it. I do like using it in combination with other modes, but I do recommend if you're looking at any of the Rumblex series, that the pulsation is really nice just as a gentle, soft mode on its own. The other is lateral. So lateral's a little bit more aggressive than pulsation. You're dealing with a lot more movement. In lateral, I've got it on my sheet. We are moving about 8 millimeters back and forth, so almost a centimeter each time. So there is a fair amount of movement, but it's side to side. This movement would be beneficial if you are dealing with sensitivities in your head, concussions, chronic migraines, ear issues. A vibration machine is not harmful to your head, but if you're dealing with sensitivities in the head, the neck, maybe you got degenerative disc, you know, there's a million reasons we have sensitivities. What happens when stimulation gets up around our neck and our shoulders is we resist it and we fight it because our body is lazy and it likes to guard and protect. So what happens, you know, in the other types of movement, when you feel vibration near the head, we have a tendency to fight it. And when we fight it and resist it, we're rigid and we actually amplify the amount of shake that we get. We stop breathing. You know, sometimes you get a headache, but it's not because of the machine. It's how you're kind of fighting back against the machine. So if you are sensitive in the head and you're just starting out this technology, with the Rumblex series, the lateral is a nice movement because it's side to side. Laterally, you will feel no movement up through the extremities like you will in the other movements. So that's just another option for you to try. If mobility is an option, and you are using the machine in a seated fashion where you're in a chair, it's also a really nice movement, just as getting some lymph and some circulation going in those lower legs. But the number one reason I recommend lateral movement is if you are dealing with head sensitivity, it's a good starting setting until you get used to it, build up some tolerance, and everybody does to a degree, build up tolerance to that head vibe. It's just kind of understanding how to bend the knees a little bit. And sometimes it takes time to get the legs strong enough just to bend those knees. So it's a good transitional movement style. More specifically to the Pro model. So the Pro model is a curved plate, as is the Mini, as is the 4D that I'm on. I would say as a whole, one question I get is, should I go with a flat plate or should I go with a curved plate? It really is a personal preference, but I would say the curved plate is probably not my first recommendation for those of you that are dealing with severe medical conditions. If you're working out regularly, you're hitting the gym, you've got some good base strength and stability, you will find a curved style plate, in my opinion, a little bit more challenging. If you are not athletic, have no plans to be, or it's going to be a long time before you get to that point again, I would recommend going with a flat style plate. You're going to be more naturally like you are on the floor if you're dealing with deficiencies. The curved plates are great, but again, I would just recommend if you're maybe that lipedema stage 1, or you're dealing with some basic diabetes, or you're working out at the gym now, not dealing with a lot of mobility and pain concerns, you may enjoy the additional challenge that the curved style will give you. You have to resist it a little bit more, and you'll feel it differently in the legs. So this one is a curved style, and it's got a little bit of a different design than their other plates. On the ends of this one, there are 2 little openings where you attach what are called stationary or nylon straps. They're not like the resistance bands I showed you earlier. These models each come with the mini bands and the resistance, the loop bands that I showed you how to adjust earlier. But this one model does come, as I said, with all the bells and whistles, and it's got a stationary set of straps. So you literally can pull yourself into the plate, and it makes your positions more challenging. And you would hold stationary positions with your arms. So those are kind of an extra bonus. What else is included with the Pro? There's a remote control that they refer to as hands-free. I will show you what that one looks like. Okay, hands-free. It's got a cool little wrist strap. So you can just hang that on your person or clip it to your shirt. Gotta go treat patients. You go treat patients, and you can watch the rest of my ramblings later, Olivia. So this is the remote control for this one. If you've watched any of my sessions in the past, those of you know I'm not a big remote control fan. I'm always pushing buttons with my toes, but this one's got a nice display. It's got the little hand thing, so you can focus on the workout. Maybe you're holding on to weights or something. So it is nice that way. It also includes some ankle straps. So there are some straps that you can use to fasten your ankles to these little side things. They're stationary as well. So this would, if I were to say, you know, all the bells and whistles, the complete pack would be their Pro model. This one is priced at $499. That $499 obviously includes the plate, the remote, the bands, and everything that I've talked about with the other straps as well. So this would be the all bells and whistles model. We're going to move to their other curved model. This one here. This one is the 4D model. They're very similar in size as far as the actual plate surface that you're using. But if you look at the specs, the Pro is 31 inches. The 4D is 31 inches as well. But this one's got a little bit of a bigger plate surface because it doesn't have the attachable ends like this one does. They've both got wheels. They are heavier platforms. The Pro weighs in at 42 pounds. This one weighs in at 48 pounds. This is their heaviest model, but it has its own unique little features here too. My daughter was in here. I see she turned this one off. This one, oh, there we go. The biggest difference between these two models, that one has some bells and whistles as far as additional resistance and workout equipment. This one has Bluetooth speakers. So if you are the type of person that likes to jam, get your tunes going while you're working out, the main difference between these two is this one has the Bluetooth speakers that you can connect to. That one does not. And this one also has some light. So maybe it's a little bit sexier looking. Let's put it that way. On the ends of the plate, there are green lights that illuminate as well. My kids love this one, obviously, because it's got the speakers and it's got the lights. I will say from a sound perspective, they're both very quiet. So that's a big thing again for many of my clients. So again, this one is their heaviest model. It also includes the loop bands, the resistance bands. It's got the Bluetooth speaker. The remote is a little different on this model. It's also hands-free, but this one is what those slap bands. Have you ever seen those? Something else my kids love about these. So you just open this up and it just slaps onto your wrist. So it's there for you, okay? So any of these models, you don't physically have to hang on to the remote. So this is what's called their watch band. It just attaches, you can strap it onto you. And it's all universal in the buttons as far as the language. So that's the type of remote that comes with that one. Other features that I do like about this one, it also has wheels. So if you are dedicating a space to your machine, I wouldn't recommend with any of the Rumblex models that you plan on moving them around regularly. As I said, this one weighs in at just over 48 pounds, and the Pro comes in at 42. So this would be a stationary recommendation. I wouldn't recommend moving these around all the time. If you decide you want to, they do have wheels. So if you are able to, you can just tilt them up on one side like this, and they wheel around quite easily. So there's always a workaround. So the last model in the Rumblex series, which is my personal favorite as far as what I've been using. The reason I call it my personal favorite is, to be honest, it's the one that I've been using the most. This is the second machine that I got from Lifepro. My first was my Waver, but I wanted to understand the lateral and the pulsation. And I, as a trainer, personally didn't have a lot of experience with that before I started working with some of Lifepro's plates. So this one is called the Rumblex Plus, the Rumblex Plus model. It has all of the same movements. It offers oscillating, it's got pulsation, and it's got lateral, but this is a flat plate version. So for those of you that are dealing with poor mobility, you're just kind of recovering, getting back to it, aren't looking for the curved style, this is my #1 recommendation as far as the Rumblex series if you're looking for a flat plate option. And again, curved is going to be a little more challenging, a little bit more athletic users. This is more of an everybody use position or type of plate. The weight on this one is also quite a bit less than these two models, just about 10 pounds. So if you want those extra features that the Rumblex offers over the Waver models, the different movements, but you don't want to break the bank, this one steps in at $399 and it's only 38.5 pounds. So a little bit more manageable than these two. Still quite heavy if you're dealing with mobility issues, but a little bit easier to wheel around or lift if you did need to, because this one's weighing quite a bit less. It's got its markers on the plate. It comes also with the slap wrist remote, the watch remote. It's got the loop bands. It's got the resistance bands. And the one thing that I wanted to add that is a huge value that comes with any of Lifepro's products, not just their vibration plates. So of course, included with any of these is access to their training and support site. So they have a Facebook group where you can discuss things with any of their products, but they also have a members only access site that has some great workouts provided by their staff, some cookie cutter stuff on all of their products. The coaching that I do, because I specialize in vibration plates, doesn't always jive and complement with some of the things they're doing. I deal with a lot of medical issues, a lot of concerns. So very often there are modifications or suggested modifications in my routines, but they've got a wealth of information in there, lots of support, and just a community that you can bounce ideas off of and support each other if you own their brand. So the one model I don't have here today that I do recommend quite commonly is their Rumblex Max model. The Rumblex Max is also a flat plate surface, very, very similar to the Plus in size, and the weight is a little bit up there. It's at 46 pounds. But the biggest advantage of the Max model is it has a much higher weight capacity. Its capacity is 500 pounds. So if you personally are dealing with extra mass, or maybe you're a workout queen and you want to load up with 50 to 100 pounds, some of my clients do. The big win for me with the Max is not just for my overweight crowd, but my workout crowd loves this plate because a lot of them like to incorporate weights and graduate to more weight, and it'll accommodate, as I said, up to 500 pounds. So again, capacity doesn't mean you personally, it means you and whatever you're adding to the equation while you're using the plate. So 500 pounds is almost unheard of in this price range for these plates. So I really appreciate that Lifepro has heard not only my plea, but many of us out there as trainers using these plates have been looking for a higher weight capacity option for a very long time. And they didn't sacrifice options and design to bring that to you guys as well. The cool thing about the Max is it's the cheapest out of all of them. It's $349 US. So if you're looking at an option, it is a little bit heavier than the Plus model, but if you're looking for that extra weight capacity, you're not having to pay extra dollars to get into that style of plate. So very affordable. And again, all of these models have a lifetime warranty. So if you have any issues with your plate, you give them a call. They each have a 30-day warranty or trial period or money back guarantee, whatever you want to call it. One of the big things I want to stress with you guys, when you get a company that gives you a trial or a money back guarantee, take advantage of it. I hate getting phone calls or messages on my posts when it's, oh my gosh, I have to return my plate in 3 days and I haven't tried it yet. Give it an honest try. You know, if you're buying something and you've got 30 days to try it, use that 30 days. Get on it the first minute you have it, even if you don't know what you're doing. You're not going to hurt yourself. Follow my instruction. Follow the guidance that comes in the box. There is one very cool thing they've come out with lately I wanted to add. Even though it comes with an awesome instruction booklet, my experience when you buy a vibration machine is you rip it open and you get on it and you don't look at the instruction manual. You just want to get using. As soon as you open the box, they've got this lovely cookie cutter. So there's a manual, but let's make it even easier and make it a one-pager. They're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to get started. Don't be afraid. You know, the sooner you get started, the sooner you can start feeling the benefits. And then by the time your 30-day period comes, you're confident in the decision you make. You're not second guessing yourself because you haven't tried it yet. I have a number of people that have returned a machine on the 30th day just because they didn't get a chance to use it. You did all this time and homework just to get this thing to your house and you didn't take it out of the box. Stop doing that if that's who you are. So if you do get a machine, get it out of the box and start using it as soon as you can. You know, in most cases, you're not going to return it. If you do need to return it, you know, it's very rare. You know, if it hurts you or if you do have a setback. Hi, Kim. How are you? Oh, but what I would absolutely recommend is, you know, at least you've given it a shot and you know. If you just try it one day and you had a bad experience and you've only got one more day to send it back, chances are that you will. So if you do purchase a machine, use your trial period, get on it, and start using it to either validate your decision, or if you do need to return it, you're not second guessing yourself because you did give it a good go. In my experience, if you put in the time and if you need some help, if you are having a setback or you've had a bad experience, usually with some modifications, I can help you navigate through that. It's very, very rare with some guidance and some coaching that you're going to return a machine. Most reasons people return machines are because they didn't know what to do, or they hurt themselves and didn't ask for help, or like I say, you left it to the last minute, didn't give yourself enough time to give it an honest shot, and you're second guessing yourself and you're just returning it. So don't be one of those people. So lots of tools. Okay, I really was impressed when I opened many of these machines just arrived last week. I really want to thank Lifepro for giving me the opportunity to review all of their machines, but I was really impressed to see this little quick start in here. It doesn't get any more idiot proof than this, people. Okay, so a couple of other things I just want to touch on, and I want to sit a little bit closer to you in order to do that. And then we're going to open up the floor to questions. So just a very quick recap. Lifepro offers a total of 7 plates that have 9 that have oscillating movement. Today, I have gone over the Waiver series and the Rumblex series. And again, there is no perfect machine for every price, budget, lifestyle, house. You know, you kind of got to do a little bit of homework. And if you're hung up and need some input, that's what I'm here for. Consumer grade, I have mentioned that a couple times. What is consumer grade? One of the things I haven't touched about as far as the specs is the frequencies or the speeds, and they do vary between the models. At the Waiver series are just oscillating motion, and top frequency on those machines is around 14 hertz. Hertz is how many times per second you are moving back and forth. All of their machines and most consumer grade machines are represented in levels or speeds. What I mean by that is it gives you some variety. So you've got 14 hertz, but on the Waiver and the Waiver Mini, they break that into 99 different speed levels. So you've got some variety. You can do increments of increases. The Micro has 30 different speeds. I think it's actually 13 and a half. It's 9 to 13 and a half. I'm going to give it anything within a half. I'll round that up. But so that one goes 30 different speeds. So essentially you're kind of moving up half a hertz with each speed level, just to give you some variety. On the Rumblex models, they have 60 different speeds depending on what combination of movement that you are using. So you can use just oscillating, you can use a combination of oscillating and pulsation, or lateral, or all three together, which is what they refer to as the 4D. You kind of get this 4-dimensional movement feeling. And there's 60 variable speeds when you do your up and your down on that. The frequency on all of the Rumblexes are also 14 hertz. And as an independent trainer that also contributes to science, I have validated not all, but about half of Lifepro's platforms. And what I mean by validate is I have my own techie little equipment that reads to make sure I can't count 14 times a second. I use a digital tachometer to ensure that the frequency that they're stating is accurate. And the other thing is the amplitude. I talked about amplitude, how much it's moving. That's a little less technical, and I do that with a clipboard and a piece of paper, and I make a mark with a pencil. So there's ways, because I represent a number of different brands, and have worked with different brands in the past, sometimes they're not always completely forthcoming and truthful in their specifications. There's 2 reasons that happens. You're buying from a company that really doesn't understand vibration machines all that well. They produce them, they sell them, they don't design them. China designs most of these machines, and some companies like Lifepro have refined and offer their own designs and their own brand. But the vast majority of machines out there are very similar, different sticker, different paint color. The industry average is about 12 hertz. So most machines out there, their actual input as far as a frequency is about 12 hertz in the oscillating world. And the amplitude is going to vary, as I said, based on the size of the machine. 14 hertz is a mid-grade force machine, a mid-level. There's really no specific terminology around force levels, but when you're on a vibration machine, we are essentially increasing your exposure to gravity. Some of the medical devices will run upwards of a much higher threshold. To have a higher threshold, you need higher frequency. Some of the medical grade oscillating devices are upwards of 30 to 35 hertz, so about twice as much frequency as the Lifepro models offer. However, you will be stepping up to a starting price point of 1,000 or more. and you're not going to have a 20-pound machine. With more performance, you'll notice that the weight of the machines tend to get heavier. One of my oscillating commercial grade devices weighs in at 170 pounds. So when you get into different specifications, different force levels, you're dealing with different devices, different cost, and very often a much heavier unit. The other thing that I wanted to point out today is when you're comparing machines, there's other things that I want you to consider. So I've covered all the specs, I've covered the moves in my sessions, but what is the best machine for me? Well, sometimes you don't know what to think about. It's not always the exercise you're doing on it or your body type. Sometimes it's the space you're putting the machine into. So if you're dealing with limited space, you may want to look at a smaller model as a starting point. If you are living in a house that's 300 years old with paper thin floors, you might want to go with a lighter model or something that doesn't have, all the bells and whistles. If your neighbors hear you walking across the floor and you live above them, they're going to hear you on your vibration machine. Now, there's ways we can pad up and absorb those sounds. Your mat underneath your machine is a good use for that too. But if you are dealing with lots of neighbors below you and thin walls, and you're aware of that now, I would lean towards one of the waiver models. They're lighter. They just have the one movement. It's the pulsation and the lateral mode that sometimes equate to more noise or sound through the floorboards, and they are much heavier and louder models. So that's one thing to think about. And if you're just starting out, if you don't plan to be a big athlete, you're just looking for basic use, the waivers are gonna be where you want to be considering. If you are looking at growing into this as a sport, you've had a machine and it's time to upgrade for something a little bit more athletically inclined, I would recommend leaning to the Rumblex models. Some of you have two. I have right now 14, 15 different machines. So sometimes maybe you've got a Rumblex and you're loving it, but you want one upstairs or you want one at the office. Sometimes having a second machine as a complement or two less expensive machines is a better choice for you than one bigger fancy machine. It really depends on what you're personally looking at using for. What kinds of poses are you going to be doing on the machine? That also comes into it. If you're just doing basic standing positions, you're not getting down on the ground and doing any massage or push up, a small plate in the corner of a small living room is probably all that you need, or maybe beside your kitchen island. If you have a dedicated space, you've got other equipment, you plan on doing some circuits and incorporating it with other things where space isn't so much of an issue, you can probably accommodate one of the bigger models. So just things, again, I want you guys to start thinking about. Maybe you're not moving so well now, and as range of motion improves and progresses, you're looking at doing different things. So when you're setting up your machine, where you start today might be okay, but you might need different space down the road and need to move the machine. So again, things to think about if you're looking at how much the machine itself physically weighs. Outside of that, I think I have covered all of the rambling points that I wanted to cover. Again, the big point is there is no best machine for every application. It really depends on you, your goals, and how you plan to progress. Lifepro as a company has been very, very accommodating to me as a trainer, and I assure you I am not the easiest trainer to please. I know a little too much about these machines sometimes, so I do tend to pick things apart. But I was very pleased when I initially started my testing and my relationship with them last summer to find, in 99.9% of the cases, they've been completely truthful with me. Anything that I've come across with on Lifepro has simply been typos. So that being said, my experience in the past with other plates has not been the case. And probably some of the bigger issues I deal with other brands are warranty issues. And again, one of the big reasons I recommend you consider Lifepro if you are looking at vibration plates is they have a phenomenal warranty and infrastructure to help you if you choose to reach out to them.